Have you ever wondered what caused the housing crash of 2024? A question that's been burning in the minds of many, stirring curiosity and concern alike. It's a question that tells the tale of an economic nightmare that shook the very foundations of middle-class American life. A question that begs an answer that's not as simple as it may seem, etched with complexities and intricacies with twists and turns. Stay with us as we unravel the events leading to this economic debacle. To understand the housing crash, we must first look back at the housing market in 2023. Picture a bustling marketplace, but instead of fruits and vegetables, it's homes. Yes, homes. Not just any homes, but homes with hefty price tags. The year was 2023, and the housing market was on fire, with prices soaring to new heights. It was a seller's market, where homeowners and property investors were making a killing, and buyers were left scratching their heads, wondering how to get a piece of the pie. You see, demand was through the roof. People were scrambling to secure a home, any home. Whether it was due to the fear of missing out, or the incentive of historically low interest rates, the rush to buy was palpable. The American dream of homeownership was alive and well, but it was turning into a costly affair. And then, there were the interest rates. The interest rates. They were so low they were practically begging people to borrow. And borrow they did. Mortgages were being handed out like candy at a parade, and the debt was piling up. It was a tantalizing offer, really. Who wouldn't want to lock in a low interest rate for the next 30 years? But here's the thing about markets, they're driven by supply and demand. And in 2023, the demand was high and the supply couldn't keep up. This imbalance led to skyrocketing prices, bidding wars, and a frenzy that made the housing market look more like a casino than a marketplace. It was a wild ride, and for a moment, it seemed like the good times would never end. The housing market was booming, people were making money, and the future looked bright. But as they say, what goes up must come down. The market was teetering on the edge, inflated by soaring prices, high demand, and cheap credit. Little did we know, the bubble was about to burst. Early 2024 saw a perfect storm brewing in the housing market. Picture this, a cauldron of economic factors, each one contributing to a growing unease. First, there were the rising interest rates. For years, homeowners and potential buyers had been basking in the warm glow of low rates. It was a time when obtaining a mortgage or refinancing a home was relatively easy, and the dream of homeownership seemed within reach for many. But as the calendar flipped to 2024, the tide began to turn. Rates started climbing, and that dream began to drift further and further away. Then, there was the tightening of credit conditions. Banks and lenders, perhaps spooked by the ghosts of financial crises past, began to tighten their belts. The easy money that had once flowed so freely began to dry up. Suddenly, obtaining a loan wasn't just a matter of having a decent credit score. Now, it required jumping through more hoops, meeting stricter criteria, and providing more proof of income and assets. The dream of owning a home was becoming a daunting challenge. And let's not forget the overvaluation of properties. In the years leading up to 2024, home prices had been on a seemingly unstoppable upward trajectory. Homes that were once considered affordable were now out of reach for many middle-class Americans. This overvaluation created a bubble. And as we all know, bubbles are meant to burst. So there you have it. Rising interest rates, tightening credit conditions, and overvalued properties. Each of these factors alone could cause a hiccup in the housing market. But together, they created a perfect storm, and as this storm gathered strength, it cast a dark shadow over the housing market. Homeowners and potential buyers alike could feel the chill in the air. They could sense the change in the wind. They knew that something was coming, and they were right. The stage was set for a fall unlike any we'd seen before. By mid-2024, the housing market had plummeted. It was a swift and brutal fall, a landslide that caught many off guard. The once booming real estate sector was now a shadow of its former self. House prices, previously sky-high, were now in freefall, dropping faster than a lead balloon. It was as if the floor had given way beneath the feet of homeowners across the nation. This wasn't just a dip in prices, it was an absolute freefall. Homes that were once valued at $500,000 were now struggling to fetch a third of that price. The market was saturated with properties, but there were few takers. As prices tumbled, the specter of foreclosures began to loom large. Banks and lenders, once so eager to lend, now tightened their purse strings. Homeowners, many of them middle-class Americans who had invested their life savings into what they thought was a safe investment, were now faced with an untenable situation. They owed more on their homes than they were worth. They were underwater, trapped in a financial quagmire with no easy way out. Foreclosures were not just numbers on a page, they were a harsh reality for thousands of families. The for sale signs that dotted the neighborhoods were not just markers of available properties, they were stark reminders of dreams shattered and lives upended. Middle-class Americans, the backbone of the nation, were hit the hardest. They had played by the rules, worked hard, and saved diligently. They had bought homes, not as speculative investments, but as places to raise their families, to build their futures. But now, those homes were turning into their biggest liabilities. The impact was more than just financial. It was psychological, emotional. The stress of potentially losing one's home, the uncertainty of the future, the struggle to make ends meet. It was a heavy burden to bear. The American dream, once so vibrant and full of promise, seemed to have turned into a nightmare. Dreams of homeownership were replaced with fears of financial ruin. The middle-class American dream, it seemed, was on life support. The American dream seemed to have turned into a nightmare. The aftermath of the housing crash was devastating. As the year drew to a close, the ripple effects of the housing market collapse were not just felt, but lived by middle-class Americans across the country. The once vibrant neighborhoods, filled with the promise of the American dream, had begun to echo with a different kind of story. The financial struggles were the first to hit, as homeowners found themselves dealing with mortgages they could no longer afford. The dream of home ownership, once a cornerstone of middle-class life, had turned into a nightmare. Families were forced to make hard decisions, choosing between making mortgage payments and other necessities like food and healthcare. The job market, too, was hit hard. The construction industry, along with real estate and related sectors, saw a sharp decline in employment. Thousands of workers were left jobless, their skills suddenly less in demand. The ripple effect extended to local businesses, from coffee shops to dry cleaners, who relied on these workers as customers. But the impact of the 2024 housing crash wasn't just immediate, it had long-term effects on the economy as well. Generations of middle-class Americans had relied on their homes as a form of investment, a nest egg for their retirement. But with home values plummeting, many saw their life savings evaporate overnight. The ripple effect was felt in consumer confidence and spending, leading to a slowdown in economic growth. And let's not forget the psychological impact. The housing crash of 2024 shook the faith of middle-class Americans in the stability of their financial future. The dream of homeownership was replaced with fear and uncertainty, a shift that would likely take years, if not decades, to recover from. The fallout was far-reaching and long-lasting. The housing crash of 2024 wasn't just a market correction or a financial hiccup. It was a seismic shift that affected every aspect of middle-class life, from finances to jobs to future prospects. And its effects, both tangible and intangible, would be felt for years to come. With every crisis, there are lessons to be learned. And so it is with the housing crash of 2024, a sobering chapter in our nation's history. The aftershocks of this crisis have reverberated through our communities and our homes, but they have also provided us with a wealth of wisdom. One of the most glaring lessons we've learned is the perils of speculation. The housing market isn't a casino, and treating it as such can have devastating consequences. Speculation fueled the runaway prices that made homeownership an unreachable dream for many middle-class Americans. It's a stark reminder that when we play fast and loose with the housing market, it's not just numbers on a page that are affected. It's real people, with real homes, and real lives. Next, we've come to realize the critical importance of financial literacy. Understanding the basics of mortgages, interest rates, and the housing market is not just a luxury, it's a necessity. If more people had a solid grasp of these concepts, perhaps the crash could have been mitigated, or even avoided altogether. It's a call to action for all of us to become more educated about our finances, to ask questions, and to demand answers. Lastly, this crash has underscored the need for better regulation in the housing market. The unchecked rise in housing prices, the predatory lending practices, the lack of safeguards, all of these factors contributed to the crisis we've just lived through. It's a call to our policymakers to institute meaningful reforms, to protect consumers, and to ensure that the dream of homeownership remains within reach for all Americans. If history has taught us anything, it's that we must learn from our past mistakes. Let's take these lessons to heart. Let's grow from this experience, and let's work together to build a future where housing crashes like the one in 2024 are a thing of the past. Despite the devastation, the road to recovery began. The aftermath of the housing crash of 2024 was a wake-up call, a harsh reminder of the delicate balance that holds our economy together. But it was also the beginning of a journey towards healing, resilience, and growth. In the face of adversity, the government stepped in, implementing a series of measures to revive the housing market. A new era of regulations was ushered in, focusing on tighter controls over mortgage lending to prevent reckless and predatory practices that had contributed to the crash. The government also launched stimulus packages aimed at boosting the economy and making homeownership more accessible to middle-class Americans. But the road to recovery wasn't just about big, sweeping changes. It also involved shifts in everyday practices. Lending institutions took a hard look at their policies, making necessary changes to promote responsible lending. They began to prioritize financial stability over quick profits, understanding that a healthy economy benefits everyone in the long run. In addition to these institutional changes, there was a renewed emphasis on financial education. It became clear that understanding the basics of mortgages, interest rates, and the housing market was not just for bankers and brokers. It was essential knowledge for every American. Schools, community centers, and online platforms began offering courses on financial literacy, empowering individuals to make informed decisions about their money. This journey wasn't easy. It required hard work, dedication, and a willingness to learn from past mistakes. But each step, each change, each lesson learned was a step towards a more stable and sustainable future. A future where the dream of owning a home is within reach for all Americans, not just a privileged few. The road to recovery was long but not impossible. It was a testament to the resilience of the human spirit, the power of collective action, and the enduring belief in the American dream. And while the scars of the housing crash of 2024 may still be visible, they are also a reminder of our capacity to heal, to grow, and to move forward, stronger than before. In this journey, we've learned that economic downturns, like the 2024 housing crash, can be devastating, but not insurmountable. Let's recap the key points we've discussed. We started with the burning question: why did the housing market crash in 2024? We unveiled the layers of this complex issue, pointing towards a combination of factors. It wasn't just one thing, but a domino effect of rising interest rates, an overinflated market, and risky lending practices. We also saw how a sudden drop in buyer confidence can send shockwaves throughout the entire economy. Next, we explored the impacts of the crash. We saw how it wasn't just a story of numbers and economic indicators, but a human story, a middle-class American nightmare. Thousands of families lost their homes and many more grappled with financial insecurity. The hardest hit were those who just months before believed they were securing their piece of the American dream. But we also learned valuable lessons from this crisis. We realized the importance of financial literacy and being aware of market trends. We saw how critical it is to understand the terms of our mortgages and the risks associated with them. And we recognized the need for responsible lending practices and for regulations that protect consumers. We then looked at the road to recovery. It wasn't a quick or easy journey, but a testament to the resilience and determination of those affected. We saw how communities came together, how individuals took steps to rebuild their lives, and how policy changes were implemented to prevent a similar crisis in the future. In the end, the 2024 housing crash was a harsh lesson about the intricacies of the economy and the cyclical nature of financial markets. But it also reminded us of the strength of the human spirit and our ability to overcome adversity. As we move forward, let's remember these lessons. Let's continue to educate ourselves about financial matters and stay informed about the state of the economy. Let's be vigilant about the decisions we make, understanding the risks and rewards. And let's never forget that even in the face of economic downturns, with knowledge and preparation, we can navigate the challenges that come our way. Remember, understanding our past helps us navigate our future. Stay informed, stay prepared.